Hello, this is Joan Fernley, your French and Latin diction coach for choirs. And in this video, I will read Mon Pays by Gilles Vigneault. Now, Gilles Vigneault is a living legend with an international career that spans over 6 decades. He is first and foremost an author, a poet, a storyteller, but it's his songs that put him on the map. And he is an essential part of French, Canadian, and particularly Quebec culture. So if you don't already have an arrangement of this piece, I highly recommend that you find one. The one that I have in my own choral library is the one by Larry Nicol that you can get at cypresschoral.com. I like Larry Nicol's writing. It's accessible to a variety of community choirs, and it's satisfying to sing no matter your level. But I do have to mention one thing. As of January 2024, Cypress has put out a new edition. And the reason for that is that the previous edition was missing some text from the refrains. So in this new edition, Cypress has added this missing text. And you have the option of doing it the old way or the new way. I recommend you do it the new way. And in the first part of this video, I will take the text apart and we'll go through the poetry, and you'll see that it's actually very simple to transcribe the words back into your scores if you have the older edition. Now, in the rest of the video, as usual, I will begin with the reading where I read the text as it's sung. And then that will be followed by tips and tricks for singers and conductors. And then finally, I'll conclude with the coaching session where I go through the whole song line by line and I cover all the text. So now, if you like what I do, please like, share, subscribe, comment below. I would be very curious to know what you think might be an essential piece for your French choral library. And now, without any further ado, let's get started on the poetry. On the surface, Mon Pays is a simple song with alternating verses and refrains. But when you dig a little deeper, you discover that you have, in fact, two poems that are intertwined. And it's pretty clever stuff. This is the magic of Gilles Vigneault's writing. Up on the screen is the full set of lyrics of Mon Pays, and we'll begin with the 4 refrains, and we'll focus specifically on the first line of that first refrain. So I'll spread the words out and take out a few words and begin with these 3 parts. The first word is mon, and sometimes you'll see ma, and they both mean my. Then you have ce n'est pas un, which means it is not a. And finally, you have c'est, which means it's. And these 3 parts are your 3 pillars of each line of each refrain. And inserted in the first 2 gaps is the same word. We have pays, that means country. And then what follows is like the answer to a riddle. So if it's not a country, then it has to be something else. And that's the last word. It's the answer. It's hiver, which means winter. And so each line of every refrain follows this pattern. My A, it is not an A, it's a B. All this becomes clear when we look at the first refrain. You've got your 3 pillars that anchor the 2 words that change with every line. So practically speaking, all you need to do is circle the first and last nouns of each line in your scores, because everything else is just repetition. Now, when I line up all the refrain and color code them, you can see the pattern emerge clearly, and it applies to all the refrains. Almost, because the 4th refrain is a bit different, and I will get to that very soon. But first, let's deal with the first 3 refrains, and you'll notice that refrains 1 and 3 are identical. So we'll take number 3 out and we'll combine them for clarity. In addition to this, the first and last lines of refrain 1 to 3 all begin and end with the same line. However, the middle 2 lines are different each time, so it's kind of like a word sandwich. So here on the screen, I isolated each word pair, and this can be a great way to learn your lyrics. And what's also interesting to note is that the words of these refrains are either things, you get pays, jardin, chemin, maison, and plaine, or some weather manifestation. You get hiver, neige, rafale, froidure. Or finally, you get a reference to song, which in this case is refrain. And this is where these three refrains are very different from the fourth refrain. In the first and third line of the fourth refrain, we begin with the usual pattern, but now there's a twist. Here, the answer to the riddle is not a thing or the weather, it's a state of being. So the first line ends with envers, which means the reverse or the opposite. And the third line is similar. We end with vie, which is life. So this fourth refrain is in fact an existential statement. So overall, in the first two lines, he says, my country, it is not a country. It is the reverse of a country that is neither country nor nation. His country is not yet fully formed. It's dormant, just like winter. And in the final two lines, he says, my song, it is not a song, it is my life. And it is for you that I want to own my winters. Here he says that this country that is not yet fully formed can only begin to exist with belonging. So this final refrain is the core message of the whole song. So now let's move on to the verses which make up our second poem. Musically speaking, we have two verses. However, poetically speaking, we really have a four-verse poem. Each verse has 4 lines that follow the same pattern, but verses 2 and 4 have an extra line which add emphasis and a bit of interest for the listener. So this 4-line pattern unifies the style, but we also have another unifying factor, which is the rhyme that you find in the 4th line of each verse that ends in zon. We get maison, saison, and horizon. And individually, each verse has its own signature rhyme. In the first verse, the lines end with the E sound. Verse 3 on the right has the ter rhyme. And in verse 2, we have L for the first 3 lines and the 5th line. And then the 4th verse ends with as. We have glace, espace, place, race. So here again, you could easily read this poem on its own without the refrains, and it would sound just great as it is. But we're not quite done yet. There is a final little nugget that I want to show you. If you isolate the 4th line of each verse, you get an additional message. My father built a house. People will come from the 4 corners of the earth. My house is your house for all humans beyond the horizon. I think the combination of these 4 lines is the core message of this second poem. As this is a modern song in the singer-songwriter tradition, French choirs can sing this song in their own regional accents or opt for one of the more standard French. However, for non-Francophone singers, you should opt for a standard French, either the classical style or something that sounds like a national radio broadcast. Now, the key difference between a modern French song and a song in the classical tradition is whether or not the ending E's are voiced. And most of the time in modern singing, they won't be voiced. But when they are, I will show them underlined on the screen. And the other distinction is how we pronounce an R. In the classical tradition, the R is rolled on the tip of the tongue. But in these kinds of songs, the singer typically rolls the R in the throat. Both are correct, but I will be reading it with the R's rolled in the throat. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. Mon jardin, ce n'est pas un jardin, c'est la plaine. Mon chemin, ce n'est pas un chemin, c'est la neige. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. Dans la blanche cérémonie où la neige au vent se marie, dans ce pays de poudrerie, mon père a fait bâtir maison. Et je m'en vais être fidèle, à sa manière, à son modèle. La chambre d'amis sera-t-elle, qu'on viendra des autres saisons. pour se bâtir à côté d'elle. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. Mon refrain, ce n'est pas un refrain, c'est rafale. Ma maison, ce n'est pas ma maison, c'est froidure. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. De mon grand pays solitaire, je crie avant que de me taire. À tous les hommes de la terre, ma maison, c'est votre maison. Entre mes quatre murs de glace, je mets mon temps et mon espace à préparer le feu, la place pour les humains de l'horizon. Et les humains sont de ma race. Refrain 1 is the same as refrain 3, so we will skip over that. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'envers d'un pays qui n'était ni pays ni patrie. Ma chanson, ce n'est pas une chanson, c'est ma vie. C'est pour toi que je veux posséder mes hivers. Tip number 1 is all about the eh sound, as in bed, and it's particularly important in this word, pays. And this word is challenging because of the a. Just on the surface, you would read it as pays, and why not? That's intuitively what you see, but unfortunately, it's wrong. It is pays. And what you can do is contrast that with another word. So in the song, we have Mon pays, ce n'est pas. So you have two words that are very similar. And so you can practice both words side by side. In addition to the word pays that comes up 18 times in this song, there are plenty more eh sounds. So beginning with the words that have the e with the accent, we have être, fidèle, and modèle. Then we have examples with AI and EI. We have plaine, saison, maison, fait, vais, été, and neige. Then we have examples simply with an E that is pronounced as an E sound. So we have tel, elle, espace, et, mais, and le. In addition to the S sounds that we've already covered, there are a few more, but they have a slightly different quality, and it's a longer S sound, and that's why we have the two dots. And a good example of that is hiver, that contrasts with e. So you can hear that difference, e and hiver. And you have that in the very first line of the song where we end with c'est l'hiver. Don't overthink this, but I wanted to mention it here because it actually does come up quite a bit. So we have the E with the accent, or we might have the AI sound, but we have an R sound that follows. We have the word hiver, envers, père, solitaire, terre, and then we have manière. Tip number 2 is all about nasal vowels. We begin with the first nasal vowel, which is ah. And for this vowel, you begin with an ah sound, the darker ah. And then you drop the soft palate ever so slightly. Air goes through the nose and you get the ah sound. Now, you don't want to emphasize the nasal sounds too much in singing. You do want an open sound, but we still need to get that nasal quality. So we go from ah to ah. And you'll see examples of that with either an E or an A followed by an N or an M. And for the purposes of this video, I'll be showing the M in brackets. And the next one is the eh sound. And so that begins with an eh sound that we've already looked at extensively, and we nasalize that sound. So we go from eh to eh. And you have varying examples of this. You will find this with an IN or an AIN or EIN, or of course the M as well. Our third nasal vowel is the on sound. And that starts with a nice round O, and that then gets nasalized. So we go from O to on. And you'll get that with either an ON or an OM. And finally, we have the sound, and that begins with an sound that gets nasalized. So we go from to and you'll see that with UN or UM. Mon Pays is full of nasal vowels, and we will look at all of these examples. Beginning with the sound, and we have quite a long list of examples with both A and E, and also two examples with the M rather than the N. So we have dent, blanche, grand, chanson, chambre, avant, en, entre, envers, temps, and vent. Next, we have the sound, and we have examples with IN and examples with AIN. But we also have the final word, viendra. And this one is a bit strange because the I comes before the E. And so you would think that this would be pronounced viendra, but it's not. It's pronounced viendra. So it's just one of these things that you just need to know. So we have jardin, chemin, refrain, humain, and viendra. Then we have the on sounds, and we have mon, two examples of son. Then we have maison, saison, horizon, and chanson. And we have chanson here again because, of course, we have two nasalized vowels. And then we have the sound, and we only have one example of this sound, and that's simply and that just means one. This sound, in fact, in some regions, it has migrated quite a bit to an sound, and you might hear French speakers say and not But in singing, you should say There's an important pitfall that you should be aware of when singing nasalized vowels, and that's to never voice the N or the M. But it's tempting when it's followed by a closed consonant. And the best example of this in this song is the word chambre. And the B will pull the M, and you might find yourself singing chambre without even realizing that you're doing it. So you have to be very careful. It is chambre, not chambre. Now, there is a list of words with vowels followed by an N or an M that you would rightfully wonder if they are nasalized. But the answer is no, they are not nasalized. And the reason for that is very simple. Simply put, the vowel belongs to the syllable that precedes the N or the M. So you have manière, ami, pleine, cérémonie, homme, humain, and une. Now you may wonder why has not been nasalized because the M seems to belong with the O. In this case, it's because you have a double consonant. And when there's a double consonant, you never nasalize the vowel. Okay, this is the coaching session where I will walk through the whole song line by line. So we begin with Mon Pays. So remember that's an E, and we don't have pays. We don't put a little ya in there. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un. So we connect those two sounds. Pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. So these are all words we looked at quite clearly during the tips and tricks. Then we have mon jardin, ce n'est pas un jardin. So again, we covered these words and we have that liaison again between pas un every time. And we have c'est la plaine. Mon jardin, ce n'est pas un jardin, c'est la plaine. And then we have mon chemin. Ce n'est pas un chemin, c'est la neige. And then, of course, we end with the line Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. And then we get into the first verse. And we need to have some really nice en sounds. Dans la blanche. And so the la is an a sound, but when you do a nasalized a, it's related to an a sound, not an a sound. Dans la blanche cérémonie. So it's an a sound, cérémonie. And the o is open, so it's not cérémonie, it's cérémonie. And the E, of course, at the end is not voiced, it is silent. Then we have Où la neige au vent se marie. So the tricky word here is oo. We didn't talk about the oo sound, and that has to be very round. It's like an owl saying who, or who is coming to dinner. So very sort of hooty sound. You want to avoid a sound that sounds like who, ooh, ooh, la neige, ooh. You want to avoid that. That's sort of into the throat, into the jaw. So you want to avoid that. You really want that right up into your nose. Où la neige au vent se marie. And AU is a nice O sound, a nice round O. That's different from cérémonie and au vent. So the O is closed. And then we have dans ce pays de poudrerie. So you have the OU sound again in poudrerie. So it's the same as où la neige. So dans ce pays de poudrerie. And then we have Mon père a fait bâtir maison. So the liaison between père and a is with the R. Père a fait. So we drop the E. Bâtir maison. Now there's a little accent on the A, and in the past we might have said bâtir and not bâtir. So this is part of the French language that evolves. In the past we would have made this a little darker, bâtir, but now we would say bâtir. But we kept the accent. And then we have et je m'en vais être fidèle. So we have the e at the very beginning, the closed sound, e, and then we have an e sound, je. Et je m'en vais, and we have that e sound, vais être fidèle. Then we have à sa manière, à son modèle. And of course, we don't do a liaison, there's a comma there. À sa they're all the same a sound. À sa manière, à son modèle. And here we have an open O again. Modèle. La chambre d'amis sera telle. And here is a pitfall where you don't want to close the M, you don't want to voice it, you don't want to say chambre, it's chambre. The M is just there to let you know that the A is nasalized. La chambre d'amis sera telle. Then we have quand viendra. So we have that viendra, it's not viendra. Quand viendra des autres saisons. And it's worth mentioning here the word des. In speech, we might say des autres saisons. So if you're looking up pronunciation on the internet or in dictionaries, you will see it indicated as an A sound. But in singing and in formal French, we say des. And if you listen to Gilles Vigneault, he does as well. So here we should say des and not des. Qu'on viendra des autres saisons. And then we end with pour se bâtir à côté d'elle. Pour se bâtir à côté d'elle. And we wouldn't do the liaison here because it is an a. That's just a rule. Pour se bâtir à côté d'elle. So it's not pour se bâtir à côté. It's bâtir à côté d'elle. And of course you have the pour, the ou sound that we spoke about earlier. And then we have the refrain again, Mon pays ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. And then we have mon refrain, ce n'est pas un refrain, c'est rafale. And the A sounds are identical. Rafale. Rafale. Then we have the word maison. Ma maison, ce n'est pas ma maison, c'est froidure. Now, froidure is a tricky one. It's quite a mouthful, and it's best to work backwards. So start with the dur sound, and the U is not in the English language, so it's very hard for non-francophones. So you begin with an E sound, E, and you round around it. So it follows the same core sound, which is E, but when you round around it, you get U. E, U. The tongue stays in the same place, and it's quite forward. I, U. So just say dur, U, dur. And then you need to add the wa sound of the O-I. O-I together does a wa sound. So you get wadur. So you want to work on that. And then you can throw in the R, roidur. And then throw in the F, froidure. Because that double consonant at the very beginning could be just enough to trip you up. Froidure. It's hard to actually say. So you really want to take those difficult words apart. Froidure. And then we have that line again. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. And on to verse 2. We have de mon grand pays solitaire. And that O is an open O. It's not solitaire, it's solitaire. De mon grand pays solitaire. And then we have je crie avant que de me. All those E's are the same. Que de me taire. Je crie avant que de me taire. Then we have à tous les hommes de la terre. So we do the liaison here, and we do voice the E at the end of That's how the music is written. À tous les hommes de la terre. Ma maison, c'est votre maison. So maison and c'est, these are all words we've seen already, but the word votre, again here it's an open O. It's not votre, but it's votre. Then we have entre mes quatre murs de glace. So here the tricky word is mur. Again, we have that U sound, which is very difficult. So remember, it's an E that is rounded, E, U. And you really have to commit. You have to round around that E. You can't have lazy lips. They really have to round. So you get, and you have the M there that's already bringing your lips together. Mur. So just don't open your mouth too much. You sort of just kiss the word mur. And here we have the word mais, that again in spoken French I would say mais, but in singing and in formal French we would say mais. Entre mes quatre murs de glace. Then we have je mets mon temps et mon espace. So we have a liaison, we link the word mon and espace, but we do not link temps and et. Just the rules. They're not always obvious, but just take my word for it. Je mets mon temps et mon espace. And these are words we've seen already. Then we have à préparer. So the A sounds are always the same. À préparer le feu, la place. And the tricky word here is feu, and it is that sound, and so it's quite rounded. It starts with an sound, as in the word for time, or an egg, œuf, but you round it a little bit more. So you go from to feu. À préparer le feu, la place. Then we have pour les humains de l'horizon. So we do the connection between les humains, and we have pour. We have that ou sound, so a nice owl sound. Hou hou, pour les humains de l'horizon. And then we end with Et les humains sont de ma race. And one thing that's worth mentioning with these un sounds is you don't want to close them too much. It's not humain, ein. It's not flat. There's still a vertical feeling to it, humain. So you need to open it up, but we still need to hear the nasalized sound. Now I won't do refrain 3, of course, because refrain 3 is the same as refrain 1. And so we'll go straight into refrain number 4. And we begin with a very similar phrase. Mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'envers. And simply envers. Quite straightforward. Then we have d'un pays qui n'était ni pays ni patrie. So you have a lot of E sounds in there. That can actually work well to focus the sound when you're singing. Sometimes it's helpful. Another thing to consider here is the word était, qui n'était. So you have an A sound and an S sound. And you don't want to exaggerate the pronunciation. You just stay relaxed and you say n'était. And it's the tongue that does the work. And then we have ma chanson. So we have a double nasalized sound. We have chant and son. So you sort of want to hang out in the same sort of vocal space. Ma chanson, ce n'est pas une chanson. So the une has the U sound again. And then we end with c'est ma vie. And then our last line, c'est pour toi. So we have the wa sound, toi, que je veux. And veux is just like feu. It's that very rounded sound. Je veux. And the X is silent. Posséder. So the O is very open. Posséder. And we have to be careful. It is an E accent. Posséder and not posséder. That can be tricky sometimes. And we end with mes hivers, mes hivers. And that is the whole song. Well, there you have it, Mon Pays by Gilles Vigneault. I hope that this video has helped you discover the richness of this text and that this song will become a staple in your choral repertoire. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. I love reading your comments, and I will see you in the next video.
C'est la neige, mon pays, ce n'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver, mon pays, ce n'est pas un